Hey everybody, welcome back to the Buried Life. Yeah, Steve here, the retired hobby tech guy, and today we're going to be talking about turning off the music so you can hear me. So anyway, it ends up that today's video is going to be interesting, and we're not going to have music. I turned it off and made sure. So if you're kind of wondering what that was all about, I made a video about a silicone brush frame that I made for my 3D printer, which is cranking out some product right now. And I accidentally left on the music, and it was real hard to hear me, so I apologize. I deeply apologize. But today's video, we're not going to do that because I'm looking down and I'm seeing it's off. But today what we're going to end up doing is we're going to take a look at Tinkercad, and we're making, or we have made, an Army Painter paint rack for the 17 milliliter bottles. And there's a number of ways you could do this. Of course, you could always buy a paint rack, and you could buy something like this. This is what happens when you have you could buy something like this, pre-made, and yeah, that costs some money. So there's always that. I mean, that's kind of a cool thing. You could do that. You could make your own. I mean, there's that there. And what I ended up doing is getting onto Tinkercad because I was like, yeah, I want something, but I don't want to have a lot of empty spaces, or some of the paint racks didn't have enough spaces. And now that I have a 3D printer, the Crowd EK2 Plus, I thought, why don't I make my own in Tinkercad? And yeah, we'll just kind of jump into the deep end there and see what happens. Because I'm not the most mechanical guy. I'm not one of those CAD wizards that a lot of people are. And yeah, I'm kind of like a blunt force object. And that's how I roll. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at Tinkercad, and we're going to show you what I ended up doing and the current product that we have. So, and as soon as I do some more fine details, we'll be posting that. Okay, so here is Tinkercad, and yeah, that's what we're going to end up doing. We're going to take a look at Tinkercad and final 66 each rack with feet. We're going to tinker that, and I'll show you what we're talking about. Now, Tinkercad is limited because you can only do so many things, and I found that with that, sometimes you can get pretty crazy with the number of items that you can put on there, and I think I'm pushing the limit in regards to how many items I can put on Tinkercad, because it is an online program and you're limited in what you can do, and I think I've pushed the limits of that. So what we'll end up doing is I made a couple of these, and let me see if I can find out where the hell I'm at. And let's put this over here like that, and we'll get a foot there, and we'll get a foot there, and we'll kind of zoom in and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So what I ended up doing is basically I ended up taking one of the, what is this, so 1, 2, 3, 4, hexagon, made a hexagon and measured the length of a 17 mil bottle that we end up seeing there, a little army painter thing. And I figured kind of the dimensions that I wanted, and so I played around with this and then ended up making a prototype for one of the cells, I guess you could end up having. And it even has a little nub in there, so that way when it fits in there, yeah, that nub will hold it. And yeah, it's kind of cool. I thought it was like, yeah. So in case if it falls down, or if it's angled or like this, you don't pulling something out or whatever. I don't know. It just seemed like I wanted to do that, so I did it. So anyway, I took a bunch of these, cloned them multiple times, and as you can see, I joined them all together and put them in rows like that. So basically, I made one, and then I copied it, moved it, pasted it, and then moved those two up, and then did those two, and then basically grouped together a whole row, and then made another row, and then just kind of moved and grouped, and that was it. Yeah, just kind of through trial and error of trying to get it spaced exactly right, and some previous attempts it wasn't. So I'm like counting the number of clicks and everything. And then what I wanted to end up doing is making some feet. So with that, I started out with, actually that's not the foot that I want. I want this foot, because I made two different feet. And let me get this to where it's going. In case you're wondering what the other one is over there, I always make copies of what I'm doing, and then that way I have a copy, and if I screw up, the copy, at least I got the original. So basically what I ended up doing is creating two versions of feet. And if you zoom in here, you'll notice that there is kind of a little semicircle there. That semicircle is going to marry up with this semicircle here, so that way you can set the model straight up and down on those feet, and you've got a pretty decent platform of which to put your paints, and it won't fall over. Of course, you'd have to either glue it, you could super glue it, you could I don't know, you could use soldering iron, and you could weld it onto the paint rack itself. And then as I was going through, I was like, hey, I've got my new Army Painter airbrush set, and what I found out is that you can use those for regular painting, for paintbrush painting, but then you can also use it with your airbrush. And I like, okay, well, I want to make a rack, and so I did that. But then I noticed that as the bottles were in this configuration, straight, and then what I noticed is some of the paint would come out. So I was like, yeah, I didn't have a problem with the regular Army Painter paints, but with the Mega Airbrush paints, what I found is they're thinned out and they're not as thick as their paintbrush paints, and so there's some of that kind of goes. And so I thought, you know what I need to do is I need to make some feet that will angle this back to keep that airbrush paint inside the bottle. So what I ended up doing is taking this here, and I tilted this back at 14 degrees, and I took basically the same thing here, and I just kind of set it in there at that 14 degrees. So it will still have the footprint of the semicircle that you can see there. We'll marry up with that there. Maybe if I kind of do this, and then that will make more sense. So kind of like that. It'll sit into, and if we take this and boom. So basically what I ended up doing is that right there, is setting it in there, and so it's angled back at 14 degrees, and it has feet. So what I ended up doing is like, okay, well, we know this part works here. I printed that out, and it's pretty good. I will say that it is a little thick, and honestly, you could probably do a millimeter. I don't know, a millimeter, really? Nah, probably two or 3 millimeters. 2 millimeter walls, you could probably do that. Excuse me. So you wouldn't have to use as much filament. Of course, I'm finding this out now after I printed this, because the walls on this are, if you can see that, there's some pretty thick walls on there. And I wasn't thinking when I was doing that. I was just thinking about shapes and colors, and I wasn't thinking about, wasting filament or not. So, and to let you know what this turns out to be, the walls on this are 2.5 millimeters. So I could probably take this down to like 1.75 and still be okay. And I still might do that. We'll see. We will see. So with that, what I want to end up doing is we're going to go over to the desk over here, and what we're going to end up doing is taking a look over there and seeing what we have. So yeah, this is kind of one of those videos where it's live and Lord knows what'll happen. I'm not real good at like writing scripts. Well, I guess I could write a script. I've done that before and then read it off the teleprompter thing, but it just, I don't know, it just doesn't seem it. seems so restricted and confined. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to go over to our desk right there, and I'm going to show you what we're talking about. Let me tune this up a little bit, because that camera seems like we got our saturation cranked up kind of high, and the contrast seems a little high. Add in a little bit of brightness to give it some light. Okay, there we go. And what we'll do is we'll take the mic and we'll put the mic over here as well. Turn the chair around. And now, here we are. So this is the paint set that we're using. It's the War Paints Air Mega Set from Army Painter. It has 60 bottles. And yeah, so I wanted to have, again, like I said, a paint rack that would hold 60 and then have, a few in reserve in case I wanted to add some stuff. But there's a lot of cool paints in here. And I like how they have the triads. So you've got like the low, medium, high. These are airbrush paints, but they actually work pretty good for regular paint on minis, and I'm just starting to find that. So if you can end up seeing here, you can have a base color, a mid, and then highlights. So you have those triads, and you could really get some good definition. Yeah, it's pretty good. It already has mixing balls in there. But with that, let me see if I can show you what I was talking about. But you can see how there's paint on there, and because when they're like that, you would get just a drop or two on the tip there. So I was like, yeah, what I need to do is basically take this and tilt it back. But just to show you, that's what it looks like here, and yeah, just some PLA, some gray hyper PLA from Creality, and again, we've got all the knobs or the little knobs there to keep everything in. So yeah, even at that angle, it holds all those paints in, and this is a pretty hefty amount. So what I ended up doing is printing these feet, and you'll have to excuse the double-sided tape that I put on there. And I thought I was done with this because I ended up putting this on here. We'll do this side. I'll do this side. And I'm so glad I didn't weld these. But as you can see, this is really sturdy. Everything's shaking. But even without putting double-sided tape or gluing these on, I mean, this is a pretty solid. It's pretty solid. So I like it. And then it's even cut out to where you could put it in between and go like that. So if you wanted it higher up or you wanted it close, you got a couple of different options there. So again, the feet just go onto the bottom of these, and you could put them either there or there. Now it's interesting because on this one, on this side, this one will stay, it snaps in and fits pretty good, but this side doesn't. And so I think what happened is when I was copying and pasting the rows and adding them in, I'm just like 0.1 millimeters off. And so it's a little bit looser on this side than it is on the other side. Well, that one works. And let me see if this one works. Does that one work? Yeah. So it's just this one there and that one. So it's just this one that seems to have a problem. But as far as trying these out, now this is just the first iteration of this. I think I've only got like 2 walls on this, so in like a 5% infill. So I just wanted to do a quick one. But with this, what you can end up doing is put that in there. And then the same thing with the other side. And now what we end up with is a real nice angle and how that's so hopefully at this angle I could probably cut these down a little bit more, but I wanted to yeah, I could probably, like if I was gonna take this, well, that's about, I could take off maybe a 1/2 inch on this, off the back side of this, and it would still be all right. So that way, if you had this up against the wall, it would be pretty darn close to about right there. So yeah, I could take off, let's see, what would that be? That would be, yeah, about 3/4 of an inch. So I could chop off 3/4 of an inch, and so if this was up against the wall, it would hit up here and then just right up there. But I think this is good. I'm not going to fret too much about that. But this is the current project that we got going on. And for those of you that are wondering, I just started painting these little dudes. You can see those, doing the flesh on that. How is that coming out? Is that coming out okay? You can see that. So that's just the base color. So we're going to be doing some more of these. And I've got these guys. And these are very small versions of these guys here. So these will be a lot easier to paint because they're bigger. But yeah, what I found out is you can end up using the Mega Air paints to paint miniatures and stuff like that, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. Again, these paints, the Mega Airbrush set, you know, the colored triads, but they're more diluted than the regular paints that we have back there, and which actually I think I like these a little bit better than those. But we'll see when I finish painting up those. We'll see how that goes. So anyway, yeah, that's what you end up having. Kind of a cool. I think I'm going to stick with this, so that you know the paints will be kind of rocked back a bit, and that's what I ended up doing. So other than that, this is the first version of this, and even though it's on Tinkercad, I think I'm going to try to make another one where the walls on this are a little bit smaller, a little bit thinner. Like I said, instead of 2.5, I think maybe 1.75, maybe 2, maybe bring it down to 2. I think that could be okay. So yeah, that's what we got going on. Yeah, good stuff, good stuff. All right, with that, let's go back to the desk. Yeah, we'll take the mic back over here, put that back there, and get back to the desk, and we will go back here. Yeah. So anyway, that's what we got going on, screwing around with Tinkercad, making paint racks for army painters in the 17 mil bottles, which turned out pretty good, I think, and it gives me something to do. Excuse me. But with that, yeah, I'm learning more on Tinkercad, which is kind of fun. It gives me something else to do, and then some other projects that I'm looking at doing. Let's take a look at, let's see if we can go back. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So we just did the paint rack one. I did the Creality silicone brush frame, a brush for the little silicone brush that is used in the K2 Plus. Took the dimensions of that, but I forgot to turn the music off on that, and so a lot of people were kind of mad at me. They're like, hey, you need to cut that shit out. Airbrush stands, I've done those. What else have I ended up doing? So that's original, that's original. Airbrush stands, original. This K2 Plus improved PTFE thing ended up, that's not original, that came from Creality, but I added some parts on there, or a part on there, and because it didn't have this extension part right here. So let's see, yeah. So it didn't have this part right here, and I think that was sorely needed because as the PTF tube goes in there without this little expansion, your PTF tube is still going to be laid over and put undue stress on that connector of where the tube goes in. And so what I found is by, they've got a little bit here, from there to there, but honestly, I don't think that was enough. And so I added this, exported it, printed out, and that's what I have on my machine now. So I did a pretty good job of that. Came up pretty good. And with the measurements that you can use on this, turned out pretty good. So yeah, the PTF tube fits in there quite nicely, and we don't have any problems. So I'll probably post that on, I don't know, it's on Tinkercad, but I think I might post it onto the K2 Plus model. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, the Creality Cloud. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm trying to figure out. And I got to do my check-in. No, I'm not going to do that. Let's take a look at my profile, because that will show the different models that I have. And so I started off doing the airbrush stands that needs double-sided tape, and then I made a self-supporting stand, which works pretty well. And then I did the paintbrush holders. That's the first version. That's the second version. So those came out pretty good. Matter of fact, I'm still using those. Where is it? Yeah. So let's go back. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So, yeah, I mean, look at that. That came out pretty good. And it holds a bunch of paintbrushes. So that worked really well. And then the other one I ended up doing is a smaller version for people that don't have that many. And of course it's in white, so you're not going to be able to see that much. But basically, yeah, ends up with the same thing. Got a little indentation there, a little one on the bottom, so you have that as well. But just kind of a small mini paint brush rack, and yeah, so I made those. I thought those were kind of cool. So the next thing I'm going to put on there is probably that Creality bracket, and of course the paint rack thing that I'm going to put on there. So, excuse me. And I'm currently printing out some stuff for my daughter. So, yeah. And we'll do that. And that works pretty good. It's unfortunate that Creality didn't support that as well as they should have on the K2 Plus. But, yeah, it is what it is. So you can see I've got different iterations of this. I've got one with 42 bottles. Because I was thinking, well, people that have a smaller machine or a machine with a smaller build area, I figured I'd better do that, and then they could put it together, because the 76 one down here for 76 bottles, that ends up being pretty huge, and most people don't have a large scale printer, so that's why I ended up doing the 42 and divide by 2 or whatever the hell it was, but I got that there. Some other little stuff, nothing really. I made a funnel for my protein drink, extended K2 Plus shelf, and yeah, that's what Avernus Riser remix. So I remixed Riser, made some changes to that, printed that out, and that's what I have on my machine now. And then this over here is the Easy Rip paper towel holder, which I think I got off of Printables or Cults 3D or Maker World. One of those, I'm not sure. So, yeah, I'm thinking about, well, I can't print that out now because I got like 3 days worth of stuff to print out for my kid. But, yeah, it'll be kind of interesting to see. Oh, yeah, that's right, it doesn't. When I tried to import it, it came in messed up. So I got to delete that. Dang it. Oh well. So anyway, that's what we got going on. Playing around with Tinkercad, made that paint rack for the Army Painter Mega Airbrush Kit. Again, they're all 17 millimeter bottles, and the Mega Airbrush are diluted down to go through an airbrush, which actually it seems great because every time I use their regular paintbrush products, I have to add water and thin them out a little bit, and with the Mega Airbrush, I just use them. So I don't know. Maybe I'll just keep using the Mega Airbrush with brushes. I haven't even tried them with my airbrush. So that's what we got going on. So anyway, with that being said, we're going to close out today. Steve, retired expat here in Korea. And for those people that are wondering, if you want to get in touch with me, there's the email address right there. I have actually answered every single person that has emailed me, even the crazy ones, and we're all crazy, so that means we're family, right? If you feel so inclined, you can like and subscribe to my channel, which I would really appreciate. And if you really want to do me a solid, you can buy me a coffee, and that's where the scrolling thing is. I have much respect for those people because they bought me coffee. And then I buy other people coffee, and everybody's buying everybody coffee or beer or whatever it is. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, kind of some interesting stuff as we're plugging along here in Korea as I'm retired. Doing resin printing, 3D printing, doing some big project for my daughter. I wouldn't say big. It's going to be, and then there's 7 plates that I have to print out. And so I'm doing the first one right now. So hopefully that'll come out, and then I got to dry some filament and do a bunch more prints. It's over 3 days, almost 4 days worth of printing. So it's like 3.26 hours of printing. Yeah, so that's going to be fun. And then after that, what I'm going to end up doing is start working on a bigger project, which is going to be a Warhammer 40,000 cosplay chain axe or a cosplay chain sword. So one of those two I'm going to be doing next. And then somewhere down the road, my dream on, my bucket list is to make a giant cosplay armor. And I probably want to do the 40,000, the Warhammer 40,000 big guy. I think that would be kind of good because I'm a big guy. And I just, I don't play Warhammer. Maybe I will one of these days. I don't know. I don't even know if they do that here locally. I'll have to check and see. But yeah, I definitely want to do that. On my bucket list is to make a huge, gigantic Warhammer cosplay armor, and of course with that you have to have the chain axe or the axe. Maybe it'll have a power fist or a power claw. I don't know. There's so many different options, but that will be really interesting. So that's what's coming up in future videos. In another future video, I swear I'm going to try to get my wife to do a video with me to go over our finances on what our monthly expenses are here in Korea. So you could stay tuned for that as well. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you're interested in some of the designs, go to Steve, Retired Hobby Tech Guy, and you could find Steve, Retired Hobby Tech Guy, in case you're wondering. Let me show you where that's at. Boom, that right there. You can find me on YouTube, but you can also find me on Tinkercad, and that's me, or at least what I do. So anyway, we're going to let you go. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video. Take care. Peace. Yeah. Did good by not forgetting to turn the music off, huh?